Alright everyone, it's time to start off today talking about the new youth populism that we see rising up around the world. This article, linked in the description, archived of course, mainly talking about Europe. But we see it in the United States, we're seeing it to an extent in places like Canada, certain parts of Asia actually as well. The new populistic movements of anti-woke, anti-left, anti-globalist individuals and ideologies are surprisingly youth-friendly. That is, that a huge proportion of the youth in some countries is backing Front National, AFD, PVV here in the Netherlands, the MAGA movement. It's lopsided. A generation ago, typically the youth was associated with left-wing politics, morphing, of course, over time into the uniparty sort of politics, the neoliberals reabsorbing a lot of the new left that rose up, actually, absorbing their support, especially in the United States. But those youth voters are no longer youth voters. They're now mainly in their 40s and 50s. They're no longer young. And so what you get is a generational backlash against Ma and Pa, who supported these left-wing policies, again morphing into the sort of yuppie mentality and latter-day movements, as they sold out. And now their teenaged kids, their 20-something kids, are participating in right-wing politics. Now, to say that all of these parties are equivalent to one another is perhaps a misnomer. PVV and Front National they're not the same ideologically. Front National, for example, is not a right-wing movement in the economic sense. That's in France with Le Pen, and they just charged to first place, by the way. It's not right-wing economically, but it's more, there's an element of moralism on one hand, but also an element of isolationism, of nationalism in the general sense. And that's, for France, it's not a left-wing party, perhaps, by French standards, but it's not traditionally conservative in the fiscal sense. With PVV, and with some of these countries, AFD, there's a plethora of different foreign policy ideas and things like that. You look at the Brexiteers, Nigel is leading the charge once again up there, and it looks like they're going to collapse the old Tory movement, so the old party conservatives are being displaced by populists as well. And again, part of that is youth movements. So part of it, I think, is just the fact that the left can't meme. And I do say that in a serious manner. I know that in and of itself is usually used in the mimetic sense, and, you chuckle at a left-winger will take what was originally a right-wing sort of screed, and they'll put a wall of text over it, and it no longer has any impact, and it's just like you shrug your shoulders, and it's like, too long, didn't read. I realize that it's usually used in the sense of itself being a meme. But I do believe, and I have spoken before, that the irreducible complexity aspect of some of the political materials that have been put out online, they tend to favor right-wing ideology or populist ideology. Certainly they're not going to be in favor of pro-censorship ideology. That would be fairly anti-mimetic, although you do get some attempts by the left. You remember Elizabeth Warren's meme team? Yeah, that lasted for exactly one day. That was really funny. They created one meme. Appear to have made off like bandits in the process of doing so. We see neoliberal politicians also, that's the other thing. A lot of the uprising politicians of dissident parties, which tend towards the populistic in Western Europe and North America, of necessity, they're led by people who are much younger. Not universally, like here Wilders is no spring chicken, but they tend to be on the younger side. They're not 80, 90 years old like half of Congress here in the United States, for example, led by a bunch of elderly people. Well, who's going to be more effective in the digital era? A leader who understands how to make his own tweets, or somebody who still uses a Nokia brick phone from 1994? It's quite lopsided, and a lot of that, what it boils down to, is that these parties are simply more flexible. They're better at online campaigning. That costs a lot less too. It's a big advantage in a world where big money politics have tended to predominate for some time. The ability to have effectively a shoestring campaign simply because you get a lot of attention and people are making jokes about you online, largely in your favor, makes sense. Again, which party is going to capitalize upon that hegemon of ad-free attention? Youth parties. groups that are younger and understand the internet more and understand apps and all this shit. I'm part of the missing link group. I got left behind by the app generation thing. I still use with my desktop mainly, and my phone is literally just for phone calls for the most part, and occasionally have to use the flashlight to dig a toy out from under the couch or something like that. But generally speaking, people under 35, I'm just over that threshold, I'm 36 by the way, are disproportionately, compared to the last generation, disproportionately they're supporting what would be seen as populistic causes. Again, Germany is not necessarily a country that you would associate with having a large, youthful, populistic movement, because last generation would conceive of them as being Nazis. In fact, they still use the same effective propagandistic terms against AfD that they've used in the past against other political movements. It's not the sort of country that yesteryear you would associate with having that sort of burgeoning movement. Not to any substantial degree, not substantial enough to have representation. Well, they do. PVV is now the largest party in the Netherlands, for example, although here Wilders didn't get to become, I think, prime minister. Well, how did that happen? And before that, the Tractor Party had a bunch of seats in the legislature. It was hilarious. Literally a single-issue party, don't seize the farms. Well, a lot of young people do work on farms. You know, they inherited Ma and Pa's farm, and it's been in the family since the middle of the 17th century. I would think you'd want to preserve that. It's almost like the globalists have overstepped, and naturally there's a backlash to it. But you can't backlash against globalism from the position of the left. It's impossible. The left represents more taxes, more regulation, and the things that are associated with globalism. You can't do it from a neoliberal or a neoconservative position, because those parties are lock, stock, and barrel, already owned, bought off by the globalists. And so the youth that's rising up against that, they're flocking to dissident parties, and there's really only one place for them to go. Populism / in some cases, libertarian mentalities of one sort or another, the classically liberal. That's about all. Peace out.